had a meeting beforehand that overrun, so my apologies for that. I will start with the webcasting introduction. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed, live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their images captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Now, members, I don't need to remind you, I know, but if you're speaking, can you please turn your microphone on, and when you finish speaking, please turn your microphone off. Apologies for absence.
None, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members, item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Minutes of the last meeting. Can I take those as being a correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 5, are there any additional reports from portfolio holders? No. Okay. I then move on to item 6, which is public questions and a request to address the Cabinet. I believe there are some this evening. Public questions, I believe I have a Mr. David Rogers. No, there was 2.
You're right.
Sorry, am I supposed to speak?
Yes, sir. Would you like to come down?
I was told I wasn't supposed to speak.
So Mr. Rogers reads his questions, doesn't he?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Rogers. Sorry for any confusion. We've had 2 questions from you. I'll let you... For the point of record, if you wouldn't mind reading your questions, then I believe Councillor Williamson will respond. Thank you. One at a time would be great. Thank you. Oh, your microphone, sir.
Yeah, okay, I've got it. So question 1 was the consultation documents do not detail the proposed access into EPPR1. Considering the size of the proposed development on the Barwood and Landvest sites, it's somewhat surprising that the design and impact of this entrance does not have more detail in the design code to enable local residents to fully appreciate and comment on the impact it will have. This is even more surprising as it is evident that Barwood intend to demolish existing houses that sit outside the original land allocation for the master plan and have put in place option agreements on properties and land prior to the issue of the consultation document in 2024. Could it be confirmed why this detail has not been included in the consultation document?
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you for your question. When the Master Plan and Design Code were issued for public consultation, discussions were still ongoing with the County Highways Authority, which is Essex County Council, on the draft proposals for the entrance to the site from Ivy Chimneys Road. The Highways Authority have since reviewed draft entrance proposals, and these are now included for illustrative purposes in the document. Full detail of all entrances to the sites will be submitted for consideration by the County Highways Authority when planning applications are submitted.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers, your second question.
Question 2 was one of the most important requirements of the proposed SEMP is that 40% affordable housing will be provided. I'm concerned that once full infrastructure and Section 106 contributions have been established, developers will be unable to make the delivery of their respective sites viable, and this 40% figure will be reduced by deeds of variation. Can it be confirmed that there will be no reduction in the level of affordable provision in the final delivery of the SEMP?
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you again for that second question. The master plan restates the commitment to a policy-compliant 40% affordable housing provision. The cost of infrastructure must be established through forthcoming planning applications, with Section 106 agreements put in place throughout that process. Any challenge to the 40% requirement would need to be supported by viability evidence in accordance with national guidance.
Thank you. Mr Rogers, thank you for your questions. Councillor Williamson, will they be sent in writing to Mr Rogers?
They can be, and they will form part of the minutes as well, I believe. But
Thank
I've got a lot more to say on the proposal when it gets to the agenda item.
I'm sure you have. Mr Rogers, thank you for your time this evening, and thank you. You are welcome to stay for the rest of the debate, but up above. Thank you very much. We then move on to a request to address the Cabinet on behalf of the Epping Society by Town Councillor Cherry McCready.
Thank you, Chairman. This evening I'm speaking for Epping Society and residents of my ward in South Epping. I'm here to express concerns about the SEMPA process. Here this evening, the Cabinet are asked to endorse the master plan. On behalf of the above and the many members of the community who responded to the public consultation, I would like to raise some questions for councillors to consider. In the light of the overwhelming public response, this evening is being considered at Cabinet, but I presume that this will be forwarded to full council. Have councillors had time to read the consultation results? It is in excess of 300 pages and only recently released, although it closed in July 2024. I direct members to the pie charts, pages 35, I hope you're noting these, 54 to 60 and 120 to 131. Also look at the 100 pages of verbatim criticisms expressed by the constituents. The public response to SEMPA is emphatically no. You are presented with a 12-page executive report in which the public's response is reduced to one paragraph on page 11. This appears to be an attempt to minimise legitimate and well-informed public concerns. How much money was spent on the preparation of this document and by whom? To have so much data reduced to approximately 5 lines. Even that paragraph only refers to traffic concerns, yet admits that a traffic impact appraisal has yet to occur. Will councillors be agreeing to an unknown? The appendix itemises the developers' responses to the public concerns, which amount to, this is paraphrased, not by me, we'll sort it out later. The developers will pay something. We'll do with that in some unspecified way. For example, off-site infrastructure mitigations. How does that ensure, for example, Ivy Chimneys Road does not become an even worse traffic and safety issue? It is already so bad that the primary school have already held a day of action. Do you not have a duty to democracy itself here? In conclusion, I would urge councillors not to endorse SEMPA at this stage, but rather spend a bit longer studying documents, consult more widely, talking to their constituents with a view to a rethink on what has all the makings of a disaster. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCready. Councillor Williamson, you don't have to comment on this because it's just a statement, but you're welcome to make any comments you may wish.
Thank you, Leader. Most of the points, I think, are covered in what I was going to say on the agenda item. There are a couple of other points, but I will add that into my agenda item if that's acceptable.
Super. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor McCready. Members, we now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is quite packed this evening, which is item 7, report of overview and scrutiny. Online we have Councillor Baldwin. Good evening.
Yes, you do indeed. Right, so overview and scrutiny met last met on the 26th of February when we received an update and provided feedback on the implementation of the PAS recommendations. The committee also scrutinised and provided comments on a range of policies, and many of which are on the Cabinet agenda this evening. I'd like to thank the leader for providing an update on local government reform at our meeting and for extending an invite to discuss his endorsement of the draft Essex interim submission this evening. The final meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is scheduled next week, which is Tuesday 25th of March. The Youth Council will be attending, and I know the presentations are always interesting. We always look forward to when the Youth Council appear at ONS. So I would encourage all members to attend if possible. It should be an interesting evening. I think that's the end of my report. That's okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. Members, can we note the report of overview and scrutiny?
Noted.
Thank you very much. Now, you're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to move around tonight's agenda somewhat because I have some items that need to be dealt with by officers and we'll need to leave quite quickly afterwards. So if members can bear with me, I'm going to start tonight's agenda with item 19 on the supplementary agenda, which is the local government reform submission. Members, this is a important document about the future of local government and local government reform within the Greater Essex footprint. As members will know, back in December, the government white paper invited us to make a submission by February to whether or not we were looking at the devolution piece with a mayor and local government reform, which was done. And this is now the next stage where we make our interim submission to government, setting out our planned direction of travel in order to deliver by the autumn our business plans for local government reform. This is been done by all 15 authorities across Essex, of which we are one and of which we have been and will be actively engaged as it moves forward. I'm sure members have taken time to read the report and will understand the implication of what's in there. We are very much in the evidence collection phase at the moment. Evidence and data will be what's needed to drive this, the important thing that the government wants and what we want. And most importantly, I believe what residents will want into the future is sustainable local government that's able to deliver the services of a quality that they would expect in the future. It is challenging. It is a hard process. Some councils, 10 councils, have rushed to a decision that they would like to see 5 unitaries, but there is yet to be the collection of evidence to prove whether 5 could actually work. And I have made no personal declaration on the number of unitaries I believe it should be, because until you have the evidence, the financial evidence and the general evidence to prove what is the best configuration, that would be the wrong thing to do. So preparing this interim response to government was a very delicate issue. Let's put it as mildly as we can. We had to bring everybody together, all 15 councils, on something they could agree with in order to move forward. We have that. It is a document that has taken up an awful lot of time of officers who have worked, members who have worked extremely hard to make sure that everyone's requirements were met within that document, and it does enable us to move forward as one group of councils looking at the best ways forward, collecting that shared data and evidence that's going to be very important. My personal ambition for us, and I'm sure shared by my colleagues in the Cabinet and beyond, is that we want to make sure that whatever emerges from this is a council that is fit for delivery in the future. That is, it's an old phrase now, isn't it? Fit for the future. We've used it for all types of things, but it really is important that whatever we create is financially sustainable. We've seen too many councils in recent times go to the wall on Section 114s because they just can't afford to exist anymore. And that's some of the driver behind what the government is doing, is to make sure that councils are sustainable. So you have before you this evening the interim documentation that will be submitted to government following a group leaders of across Essex meeting on Friday. And I'm happy to take any questions. We did invite Overview and Scrutiny to be present this evening as well. It's nice to see some members here to actually play a part in the debate that is to come, and we look forward to hearing from you. So, any questions? Silence. Councillor Wiskin.
Thank you, Chairman. One thing which, two things which appear obvious to me is that there is a view that and I know it's not in this council's direct control, that there is a potential watering down of democracy and representation with the lessening number of councillors. There seems it's very quiet on what the responsibilities are of town and parish councils. It's quite clear to me that they are the ones who are closest to the ground, their ears are to the ground. This is it not an opportunity to give more power to the elbow of those bodies? And secondly, at a higher level, given that most people's expectations of their local council probably start with A, while their bin's being collected, and B, what state are the roads and pavements outside their houses like, and where they drive to work and to leisure activities, it's quite abundantly clear that the highways, Essex highways, are, in my view, failing us. And is this not an opportunity to take some of those services back to the smaller unitary levels where they can address the issues more closely to home?
Thank you, Councillor Wiskin. Indeed, really good questions. Thank you very much. Firstly, on the towns and parishes, the White Paper was remarkably quiet on towns and parish councils. I think they get 3 mentions in the whole White Paper. But obviously, one of the important things will be, when the new unitaries are arranged, will be the importance of how do they connect back into local communities. We are lucky here, aren't we? And I think I mentioned it yesterday when I was debating this in a somewhere else. And of course, where I think we've benefited is from having that understanding of local place and geography. And of course, we've got towns and parish councils across the Epping Forest footprint. But if you go to Harlow, they've got no towns or parish councils, and that's the same for other places. They obviously have a role to play, an important role. We have some very good towns and parishes, Loughton being a good example of a good town council, along with Waltham Abbey and Buckerstill and others across the area, and some of our brilliant parishes in Northfield, Nasing and Roydon are first-class examples of really being good advocates for their communities, and I'm sure there will be a role for everyone to play in the future as this moves forward. On your wider point, I see the benefit, and I've explained this to people, when you look at what a unitary will be, think of all the things we currently do as a district council, and add on top of that all the things that the county council does. That's what a unitary will be. And we will have a responsibility for social care. We will have a responsibility for a highways contract. We don't know quite what shape that any of those things will take just yet, but the exciting opportunity is some of those big services will become closer to the communities that they serve. And I think when I first became a district councillor, we still used to have a West Essex Highways Agency. It was a different type of arrangement, but I think actually this is an exciting opportunity to bring some of those big services closer to the communities. And whilst we might need local committees or some arrangement where we can devolve additionality downwards, that will happen, but I see this as a really exciting opportunity for the future, and you know, especially for an area like Epping Forest, I'm looking forward to those challenges ahead. Any other questions? Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it's 50 years, give or take, since we had the current settlement, so it's perhaps not surprising that it's time to look at whether the current settlement we've got meets people's needs. I confess being slightly alarmed at the costs involved in just putting forward a case for reorganisation, let alone actually doing the reorganisation. And we don't want to be in a situation where any savings come so far down the line as to almost not be findable given the cost of setting things up in the first place. I've also got concerns about about the distraction this will be for members and officers all talking and discussing about reorganisation and who's going to do what and where it's going to happen and so forth, while we've still actually got really big challenges to meet, delivering day-to-day services and getting things done. But clearly the government's made these demands, and I am pleased to see that Essex has come together and managed to put a common approach so far. I do think that is important. I mean, thinking back to the 1990s when this was last discussion, I mean, the ridiculous spending on advertising about, we ought to have counties, we ought to have unitaries, we ought to do this, we ought to do that. And it's all public money, and it didn't really get us anywhere. So I'm pleased that we've got a unified approach, and I hope that lasts, well, I hope it lasts right through till September and final submission. I mean, whatever we do end up in terms of numbers of councils, I think we've got to recognise that large councils have disadvantages as well as less large councils. None of these councils are small. I mean, if you look at the size of current unitary and district councils, certainly some of the biggest councils, they tend to divide their services up into west, east, north, south, mid and so forth, because they find delivering services over a massive area brings challenges. You get longer chains of command and so forth. You get services more remote. So, I think the work of the working groups you've got here on scales and services are as important as the working groups are equally important, to the working groups looking purely at the financial bits and pieces. We do want to keep local government local. We don't want to end up with a load of sub-regional councils. So I think I'll leave my comments there. I think it is important members continue to be involved. I think we were generous when he said numerous councillors are here tonight, but I hope we'll see more involvement from councillors and more involvement with scrutiny in the other committees as we go forward. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Whitehouse. And again, really good questions and really good points. There is much we do not know yet. And I think that's right. And as we find out more and we have a better idea of how things might work, I'm sure councillors will engage more and more in the process and become more interested in the process. And you're right, this has been 50 years since the last review of local government. And back then, in the end, they came to a fudge. And it's really important this time we don't fudge it. We need to make sure that we do drive the best we can for the residents, businesses, in order that we have a sustainable council that delivers on the services that people require. And I think the fact that the last time this was done 50 years ago means that local government doesn't necessarily now reflect correctly the demands of what our residents and businesses are, because they've changed, and we saw this through the pandemic, where the county was too big to deliver on some items and we were too small to be functional in some areas. So I think we've learnt an awful lot in recent times, and I think that will help to illuminate the path towards the unitary councils. It's a bit like that Goldilocks moment, isn't it? Where you've got 3 beds and one's a little bit too big, one's a little bit too small, maybe it's the one in the middle, Councillor Whitehouse, that gives us our relevance to geography and place. So there is a way forward on this, and I believe we are making good progress towards that. But you made another very good point, because whatever happens, we will still be in existence for the foreseeable future. There will be a time when Essex County Council won't exist anymore, and Epping Forest District Council won't exist anymore, or any of the other councils that we work with on a regular basis as partners won't exist, and there will be a new unitary system. But until then, we have a duty to continue delivering the services that really matter to people. Now, we often talk in this chamber about how pleased we are with the way the waste contract is working with 99.8% delivery. I've got it right this time, Councillor Balcombe. Or how pleased we are to be able to deliver that new sports centre in Epping and the other things that we are doing. So we have to keep an eye on the ball, and that's why when we made the changes at full council the other week, we took that into account when Andrew became the chief exec, and Jen, taken on her roles, also has the title of deputy chief exec. So we can do just that, so we can keep our eye on LGR and play the active role that I intend Epping Forest to play a part in it. But also, most importantly, we keep delivering on those services that matter. So that we have a plan here in Epping Forest, and I'm sure every other council in Essex will have a similar plan. But that's our plan. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman, and some really good points raised on this matter. And I think Councillor Whitehouse's point around there's still a job in hand and there's a lot to focus on. I think that's a really poignant point, and I think really there's a big responsibility on all members of all groups, and to ensure that we're encouraging our fellow peers and that, to make sure we're attending meetings, we're contributing, because this isn't a case of the doors are shutting soon. There's a lot of work to be done, and we need to stay focused. I know from the interactions I have with the officers, and as the leader alluded to, the work that's been happening with the restructure of the management team, and that the guys, the officers are very focused on the task in hand, while also dealing with the new added challenges they've been tasked with. So I think it's important that everyone in the room takes that upon themselves, and to encourage other fellow members to make sure they're participating. And the other point is on Councillor Wiskin's point. I think there's a real opportunity for parish and town councils to really be rejuvenated by this process, because I think, because obviously there's going to be a reduction in councillors, there's going to be a lot of councillors that can't make the commitments that are going to be associated with a new unitary. So you're going to have a lot of talent, for a better term, that is going to be available, that may not, that have dedicated their time to a district level or to a county level, that may not, the new structure might not fit with them, that they actually want to utilise their skills with town and parish councils. I know from my time at Waltham Abbey Town Council, sometimes there was challenging in recruiting new councillors and getting people to participate. Well, there might be 2 or 3 district councillors that then don't go on to the unitary council, that may want to utilise their skills in the town and council. So I think if there's a positive attitude from the town and parish councils, and a sort of glass half full kind of approach, then this could be a really good thing to rejuvenate a lot of local town and parish councils, and sort of give us a good opportunity to move forward.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Very good points. I do apologise. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I go along with a lot of what has been said today, particularly the point made by Councillor Whitehouse. I worked in the NHS, which was forever being reorganised, and the problem was senior management was spending all their time working out the new structures, which took their time away from running the service that they were supposed to be running. So it is a very important point that we do make sure that we have sufficient people carrying out the reorganisation, so as to allow us to deliver the services as they should be. The point about local representation, I think, is important. There's bound to be large awards. The representatives will be further away from the people that they are intending to represent. So in some senses, the lower number of district councils you amalgamate, the better. However, on the other hand, as you said, Chairman, we've got to have sustainable councils, and I'm concerned that we have a sufficiently large council tax base to be able to deal with, which are very expensive services, social services, education, highways, that we don't have a very high council tax because there's just too few properties and council taxpayers there. It's a difficult one. I don't have an easy answer. If I did, I'd probably be working for some consultant somewhere. But I look forward with interest, and I think we all do, to see how we balance that. And no doubt that's some of the work that Grant Thornton will be undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Amos, and actually you make a very good point. Scale and size of the authority will be important. But getting the right size is going to be the hardest part. But bearing in mind the services that will be taken on, that needs to be thought through. I think Mr. Small wanted to say something.
I think just to echo a lot of what has been said already about the need for speed. I think really there's real danger that we could just get caught up in this and not focus on what we're really here to do, which is making sure that we are serving the needs of residents, of course. And I think we're committed to, certainly as an officer team, to make sure that we are focused on delivering the day job and not using LGR as an excuse to do nothing really over the next couple of years. So we're going to be very much focused on that. And also to agree on the point, I think parishes will have a really important part to play. I think, you know, they are close to the communities and will be even more so. And again, a good point about size, really. I think, you know, if you try to create unitaries that are too small, then they'll just try to be super districts and perhaps not engage with the communities and almost neglect them. I think if you create a larger unitary, then almost you're forced into creating structures that are closer to the communities to make sure you're listening to their views. So there are pros and cons, I think, of both approaches. And the leader's absolutely right, but whatever it is, it needs to be sustainable on day one. To create a unitary that's close to the communities but doesn't have enough resources to serve them, I think would be a failure on our part. So we need to make sure whatever is created is going to be sustainable into the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? We have the recommendations here. I'll be going to the next group leaders meeting on Friday. Can I take those recommendations as being agreed? Agreed. Thank you. I'm then going to move to item 15, which is the contract for energy efficiency retrofit for EFDC homes. Now, part of this is on the pink. I'm going to try and keep it in public session for as long as possible. If we err into any tender details, I will have to go into pink, and that means clearing the chamber and everything else. So, members, if we can try to avoid that, it would be a good thing. And I'm giving that warning not just for 15, but for 16, which will follow as well. But we're going to try and keep it in public session. So if members could do their best for me. So item 15, Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. I think at this stage we're going to defer to officers because they've got some updates for us, and I think... So we're going to defer to officers because John's got an update for members, which I think is quite encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Taphouse.
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah, so this report asks Cabinet to approve the appointment of Morgan Sindall to deliver our energy efficiency retrofit programme, subject to grant funding. So since submitting this report, we've had confirmation of our grant funding. Now, we bid for £3.5 million, but then we had a letter from the Department DESNES warning us that it was oversubscribed and they wouldn't be able to give everyone what they wanted, and warning us that we may only get 40% of our bid. But our allocation, although it wasn't for the full amount, it was for significantly more than 40%. We have been allocated 2.22 million, which is 63% of our bid. So we've run the scenario of the expected cost of the retrofit works and this grant allocation through the HRA business plan, and we're comfortable that it can be accommodated comfortably within the debt headroom. I won't say more than that, but if there are any questions.
Thank you very much. That's most helpful. Councillor Bedford, did you want to add anything to that at all?
No, I just think it was pleasant news. I think we were all expecting that we were going to get less than what's actually been approved, so it's a benefit to us to get the money that we can then invest in Thank you. Get the money we can invest in our housing going forward.
Thank you. Members, any questions on that good news? No? Do members see any need for me at the end of this session to go into private on this? No? Okay. In that case, can we agree that recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you. We then move on to item 16, installation of PVCU double glazed windows. Sure, that's the wrong way around. But, and doors, specialist maintenance repairs. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Leader. Remember to turn the microphone on this time. This is good news. I think it's taken a while to get this contract to where it's going to be. I don't think there's more I can add. 2 tenders, I believe, went through to the final stage. We don't need to go into a private session at the end to discuss the tenders, but I will pass over to Mr Taphouse again for an update. Thank you.
Mr Taphouse.
Thanks. Yeah, all this is we regularly replace windows and doors that come to their end of their lives, and that's always going to happen. And we had a 5-year contract that's now come to an end, so we just re-tendered this for what we anticipate we need to do over the next 5 years. And so that's simply all it is. The rates that came back are roughly the same as what we've been paying so far, so we're confident they're competitive.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? No? Okay, can I agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Right, we then move back to the main agenda and we start with item 8, the insurance tender extension. Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, you caught me off guard there. Let me pop a moment. Thank you, Chairman. And this should be a pretty straightforward report, and it's to approve the existing insurance contract with Zurich, Protector, Maven and RMP following the tender for a 3-year long-term agreement and a further extension of a 12-month period. Hopefully members have had an opportunity to read the report in full, but this is just the renewal of our insurance and standard process. Happy to take any questions and have officers present.
Thank you. Members, this is a really standard, straightforward piece of work. Any questions? No, therefore can I agree to recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We then move on to the substantive item really this evening, item 9, which is the South Epping Master Plan area. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to bring the draft South Epping Master Plan area, Strategic Master Plan Framework and Design Code to Cabinet for endorsement as an important material planning consideration. The site is allocated in the local plan and all sites identified for allocation have been selected following a vigorous application of the relevant site selection methodology prior to approval by the inspector. The site is no longer within the green belt and any effect on the FSAC is taken into account with the Council's mitigation strategy. So the principle of development is absolutely established. The South Epping Master Plan area is allocated for a minimum of 450 homes, 40% of which will be affordable, a primary school, community space, a suitable alternative natural green space, new or enhanced bridge crossing over the central line, and a flexible retail provision. The development of the master framework and design code is in response to the adopted local plan policy P1. The master plan and design code have been developed by a developer consortium with the FDC and Essex County Council Highways and Schools team. Both the strategic master plan frameworks, really I'm going to call it SMF in future, and the design code have been reviewed by the Council's Quality Review Panel, Natural England, and have been engaged to review. Natural England have been engaged to review the SANG design. In line with the FDC's Statement of Community Involvement and Master Planning Briefing Note, there has been a comprehensive 6-week formal engagement with the public and statutory consultees. NHS Hearts and West Essex Integrated Care Board will seek financial contributions towards expanding existing surgeries. Enhancements to off-site infrastructure and contributions towards public transport enhancement will be sought during the planning process. For those that ask the questions about where does all the profit go, I'd like to state that EFDC do not profit from these additional homes. Any increase in rateable income comes with an equal increase in services that have to be provided. I've been given detailed comments from Epping Forest Heritage Trust regarding air pollution and traffic and managing the number of additional visitors to the forest. This is our ongoing work with the FSAC, and this is what the Section 106 money goes towards doing. I agree with all of their aims. Whether we can achieve them again is to be decided, but it is something we are seriously looking at and will continue to look at. They also mentioned the facilities on site and disappointing about the health facilities. Going on to the Epping Society, I received an email, I think we all did, and then I'll try and tag on the questions that were asked in the chamber. It's been pointed out that the newspaper article and the website master plan was delayed because of the negative response from the public to the consultation. I'd like to make it absolutely clear that the actual reason for the delay in bringing the master plan to Cabinet, because we were seeking further discussions with TfL and Essex County Council on the delivery and adoption of the bridge crossing the central line. It's a very complex task and it's ongoing. They also mentioned that they would ask all the councillors to please at least skim the engagement report and the 100 pages of verbatim criticisms. I can state to this council I've read every single one of those, including the many duplicates when people put their objections through in multiple places. So the Guardian this week, or last week, had a headline, 3 out of 4 residents object to these proposals. It makes it a bit clearer further on that that's 3 out of 4 of those that responded. And I think we all know here that when people object, they are more likely to engage with the process than those that have no objection. So it is not 3 out of 4 residents, it is 3 out of 4 of those that responded. As I mentioned earlier, there are quite a few multiple objections within that. I'm losing the page. There are also in there some comments which I totally disassociate myself from, and hopefully the rest of this council. There were some appalling messages in there. Going back to some of the questions that were raised earlier, this will not be going to full council. If it is accepted by Cabinet, it will go forward as a document. Sorted out later, I think, was mentioned. I'd like to point out that this is a master plan framework, not a planning application. It's quite normal, and all of the detail will come out in that planning application. How much was spent, I think, was mentioned. I'm grateful for the officers for pointing out to me that it's the developers that pay the cost of the master plan process. So I've got no idea how much was spent and don't really want to know, I think is probably the answer to that one. Anecdotally, I spoke to the Youth Council as guest speaker earlier this month, and trying to outline what I actually do as a portfolio holder, and the nuts and bolts of it are delivering the local plan. And I felt quite strongly that it's all well and good for people living in their homes to object to these homes being built, but it's the youth that are going to actually be looking for homes in the future, and I think we're going to be letting them down if we don't build the houses within the local plan. I think I've covered the points raised by the Epping Society this evening. Democracy, there's been an awful lot of democracy on these sites. It went through an exhaustive local plan review. When I say exhaustive, I mean it, and all of it was approved by the inspector. So I think there's been enough democracy, and it's about time we got some spades in the ground, to be honest. Therefore, I recommend that the South Epping SMF and Design Code be formally endorsed for it to be taken into account as an important material consideration in the determination of future planning applications. It will also inform pre-application advice, assessing planning, and any other development management related purposes. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Holly-Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. And obviously we've had many of these master plans come to Cabinet. And I think what I would say as an Epping member, there's something in the local plan that everyone doesn't like. And I have to say, this is a site that I don't particularly like. I expressed this at the time, and particularly throughout some of the private conversations and the formation of the local plan process, that I do not particularly believe this is the best site for development. However, I do acknowledge we are where we are. The local plan has been adopted, and I do welcome the reduced numbers on this site. And actually, it is really worth stressing with the current government's view on development, the fact that we have a local plan is really, really important, because it stops other speculative, or hopefully stops other speculative development happening, particularly on our precious greenbelt sites. So the fact that we do have a local plan does provide that level of protection. But as I say, on this specific site, I've always had big questions and things that I am very don't necessarily support. And as I say, the principle of development is set within that local plan, and the 500 homes rather than the initially proposed 1,000 homes, which would have been ludicrous, is more workable. And as Councillor Williamson quite rightly said, this is a master plan. This is setting out the parameters. When a planning application comes in, that's when we can look at the detail, really fight for what the Section 106 gives to the local community, because that is what is really key. The two things that I am most concerned about are highways pressures, and I was at Ivy Chimney School just last week talking to pupils and parents about the highways issues there, and it is a real area of pressure, particularly Centre Drive, that area immediately outside the school. And when talking to officers, it was good to hear that the City of London have been engaged, because they do own the grass verges opposite the school, and that has been an issue which has worsened the congestion problems. But then on the other side, you've also got the speeding problems. So when looking at the detailed application, highways has absolutely got to be at the heart of it, and there has to be a workable solution. I am very concerned about the additional traffic and what it is going to mean for residents already living there, and also during the construction process as well. But that is something that really needs to be kind of hammered out during the application process when it comes. I have already raised this with local highways officers as the county councillor, because this is going to be the most serious practical concern, I think, for residents. The second thing I would like to raise, and it's a shame we didn't have the next item on the agenda first, because I think GP provision is a really topical issue. I don't like the fact that this is suggesting that GP provision shouldn't be on site. I think it absolutely is a demand for extra GP and health provision on site. There already is that demand, so there's going to be even more demand when the new houses come. And I think as part of the detailed planning application, what we should be lobbying for is a space where at least a GP or a pharmacist can visit, so there is that extra health provision. The allocation of ICB funding is a wider issue. Often we feel that with big development and small development, the ICBs and the NHS ICBs, that's the Integrated Care Board, aren't asking for enough money. Part of the problem is that they don't necessarily have the doctors to fill the surgeries. As Councillor Rizvi will know well, but actually they're not meeting the demand of communities. When I go out talking to people in Epping, GP provision is always the first thing that comes up. So I really do think as part of the detailed application, we need to fight to make sure, one, the ICB is allocating enough money, but also that we could look to do something on site, even if that was a flexible provision on site. That is really, really important. I'd be interested to hear other comments from members of the Cabinet and the wider membership this evening. But the last point I would just really like to stress is around affordable housing. As someone who's grown up in Epping, I know how difficult it is to be able to stay in Epping and buy a house in Epping, particularly for young families who are kind of making that next step onto the housing ladder and looking for a family home. I think what is really key, and again this will go down to the detailed planning application, is that local people get first preference on those affordable houses. And I know with other planning applications we have put conditions in place to ensure that people who live in the parish actually get the first dibs on that accommodation. And I think when looking at affordable housing, we look at different tenures of affordable housing. So whether that be shared ownership where people get a stake in their own home, but also social housing for those who need the extra support. And I really want to make sure that it's Epping people who get those affordable homes. And I think that's really key and something that I would like, certainly in the detailed application and if possible reference within this report that we're looking to approve this evening. So I have made my comments around this. I've kind of made it clear, particularly behind closed doors where we make these decisions and shape these papers, but also within all the public debate and consultation, which I've made sure I've played an active role in, that I don't like this site. It's in the local plan, so it's going to happen. So we have to make it work and get the best for the local community. But as I say, I'm interested in hearing what other members say. I will vote for the master plan, but I'll be very keenly watching the development as applications as they come in and making sure I feed into the detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson, the wish list.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put them on the wish list. Yeah, the affordable housing allocation, that can come forward at the planning application stage maybe. I'd just like to clear up the Integrated Care Board. It's their decision how much money they seek through the Section 106 process, not Epping Forest District Council. So we are putting in every penny that they've actually asked for.
Thank you. Thank you. Members. Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to start by saying I'm not against more homes, but from the start I've thought that this is the wrong site. And ward members and I did put forward our reasons why at the time, but that's past history. I was concerned that the Integrated Care Board are saying that it's not necessary to have an on-site health facility. There's provision in the plan for a retail space or cafe. There is a small shop in Walnut Road, so that would provide a shop, and could not that space be used for a health facility? It really is needed. From the very beginning, residents have said they need a health facility. Transport is not good to the Limes for people who don't have a car. You'll be aware of the 2-hourly bus service up Bower Hill. I'm not sure how often the one in Centre Drive goes, but not that frequently. And, you know, a lot of particularly old people need to go and have dressings done or monitoring of their health done regularly. And it would be a real help to have some sort of facility on site. I don't know what the evidence was that brought the Integrated Care Board to that decision that they don't need to have something on site, but I'm hoping I can take that up. But unless you have it. But
did you want Councillor Williamson to answer? Then you come back.
I have another point to go to, but we can do that first if you like. How do you want to do it?
No, let you finish off first.
Right. The other thing that I'm concerned about is this lack of a plan to deal with the traffic congestion outside the site. There's lots of talk in the papers about what's happening inside the site. But from the beginning, residents have been very concerned about the extra traffic. I know everybody's supposed to walk and cycle, but I don't know if these people who keep saying this in the report have ever cycled from the bottom of Bower Hill up to the High Street. But yes, if you're young and very fit, you can probably do it. But a lot of people won't be able to do it, and they will be dependent on public transport if they haven't got a car. There's talk in here of contribution towards public transport enhancement will be sought through planning applications. Well, you know, that's very bitty. You know, planning application comes in, so much money is put to one side, but that doesn't give a permanent assurance that a route will keep running. And an alternative to extra public transport is community transport, who perhaps run a shopper bus. But going back to the extra transport, if it's not the the people on the site who are moving elsewhere. There'll be online shopping vehicles coming. There'll be vehicles coming for people working from home. There will be an increase in vehicles coming. And as I said before, there's no plan. It's just coming through with a planning application. Some money will be put aside for it. But there needs to be an overall plan. We were told there would be at the very beginning when the local plan was first discussed. Infrastructure was supposed to come along with, if not before, the site. But there's nothing. When I've talked to developers, they've more or less said, oh, it's not our responsibility. But it must be someone's responsibility. And we need an overall plan, and then maybe the planning applications, contribute towards it. But we do need a plan for what's going to happen to Bower Hill, Centre Drive, and especially around the junction at the top of the hill, where everything's going to go onto the main road, just been a concern all the way through. I do think that's a big lack. And finally, the equality assessment says that there's no impact on anyone. There is no equality assessment there for us to see. And I just can't believe that there is no impact on the older people who will live on that site. I'd really like to see the equality impact, please, assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your questions. The on-site surgery is again, it's an ICB decision, not an EFDC one. They've been pretty clear that they do not wish to put any provision on the site. I think I'd have got to defer to officers on the transport bit, if I may. They're probably more clued up on. I've looked at the master plan, but outside the site, I haven't necessarily looked at. Okay.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson. I think also we have a little bit of additional information from the NHS, which talks about their plans within the next 5 years to either extend or relocate the Limes practice. Oh, sorry. Sure. Yeah. We have a little bit more information from the NHS now on their plans within the next 5 years to either extend or relocate the Limes practice in their overall look at what's happening with St Margaret's Hospital. There's also some more detailed fees and an approximate amount of contributions per dwelling that they would seek when that comes forward. So we have a bit more detail on that now. With the transport, I think the short answer is there will be a plan. We will need to see transport assessments that come forward with the planning applications, and they will analyse car movements in exact detail that align with precisely the amount of homes that we have on the site. And there will also need to be what's called an LTN 120 analysis, which looks at sustainable transport and off-site contributions or enhancements for walking and cycling. So there will be packages coming forward on transport. And Essex don't agree to us finalising those things at master plan stage. So we simply have to deal with those when the planning applications come forward. It's not really a choice that we have. We will be seeking the best deal on those things. We can assure you, and those conversations have been going on, but they need to be concluded when we have more detail at the application stage.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rizvi.
Thanks, Leader. And just to come in about the point of the ICB and health infrastructure, in my capacity as the portfolio holder for community health and wellbeing, we have been actively in discussion with the ICB. As Councillor Williamson quite rightly says, it is firmly the responsibility of the ICB to liaise with the developer in terms of the 106 agreement and lobby for improvement in health infrastructure. Whether that is on site, it is difficult to predict. Whether it goes as an off-site contribution to existing infrastructure, that remains to be seen. But I will be presenting a report on the next agenda item in terms of driving better health outcomes through working with the ICS. So maybe I can comment a little bit more during that.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point on, because I echo some of the other councillors' concerns on the transport plans in the wider area, because we know we've seen this all too many times with, there's a big focus on the impact within the site, but then it's that knock-on effect on the wider area. So when and I appreciate that needs to be an item that's assessed at the planning level, but obviously when we look at planning applications, we need to take each planning application on its own individual merit. In a situation like this where we'll have multiple planning applications coming from different developers, will Essex Highways, would it be within their power to be able to look at them together, because, you know, one development, the Bellways bit, will do a plan and go, you know, this is how much impact we're going to have, and it might be, you know, deemed that only certain measures are required for that. But if you then add that to what the other ones are going to have, the net impact on the residents of Epping South and Epping in general is going to be really high. So I don't know, is that something we can stipulate, or is that within Essex Highways' remit to be able to do that? Thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
I think, yeah, I accept your point about separate applications coming through, if they do. But that's the reason we have a strategic master, I've got to call it SMF, strategic master plan framework in place. So I think they would look at the overall, even if we were looking at half the site as a planning application. That's the reason we're doing all this work.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Whitbread, you wanted to come back.
Thank you, Chairman, and just want to say it was welcome news about the limes. I think a possible extension of that would be good for Epping, but I still don't know whether it will be quite enough to meet the needs of a growing community. I just want to make the point on ICBs, and it's probably more relevant to the debate on Councillor Rizvi's report. I do think we need to do more to hold the ICB to account on this. I mean, this isn't just a problem in Epping, this is a problem across Essex. In my role as Deputy Cabinet Member at Essex County Council, we're often talking about the fact that not enough money is allocated through planning applications to go towards NHS infrastructure, particularly GP provision, but also wider provision, whether it be hospitals or in community care. And I think this is a big issue. And actually, I think we need to use, and Councillor Baldwin is online, it perhaps would be a good role for scrutiny to call the ICB in and ask specifically around this question, because particularly with applications coming forward from the local plan, this is just going to carry on being an issue. It's something I'll continue to pursue at county as well. But we really need the ICB to ask for more money. They're asking a developer for more money for the NHS, and it's their role to be doing that, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back on the ICB, I saw the details that were referred to this morning, and I've just checked, and we can put that in the public domain, so it can go round to councillors. Good. So that would put a bit more bones on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. I've spoken a lot on this site since it was discussed at Council in December 2012, and I spoke at the examination in public when the number of dwellings was reduced from around 950 to the current, and at the Council meeting when the local plan was adopted in 2023. So I won't go over the issues of principle again. It's a legal fact that it's an allocated site in the local plan. But I do want to focus specifically on various things about the master plan and where I think it's lacking. I've got some detailed comments that I'll submit to officers, but I think there's some wider comments as well that need to be considered tonight. And I do understand why lots of residents feel that their concerns haven't been adequately responded to. I mean, Councillor Williams was a bit dismissive earlier. It is true that objectors are more likely to respond than supporters. It is also true that this was a large response for consultation of this site, and indeed considerably larger than some of the equivalent consultations we've had in the district. And I think that reflects the strength of feeling that many residents have. I'll take things broadly in the order they appear in the report, so that's probably easier than in order of importance. There's mention of the pedestrian and cycle bridge potentially being enhanced rather than new. I mean, it's currently a very, very basic footbridge, and it is frankly difficult to see how it could be both enhanced rather than replaced and deliver, the quality of access required for, all ages, cycles and so forth to get from one site to the other, particularly to access the potential new school. I mean, the original requirement was for a bridge that could take a bus. It seems every iteration of this plan, the bridge is downgraded, and I am concerned that an enhanced footbridge will mean a little liquor plaint and not much else. I think that's a really important bit of internal movement within the site, and yeah, I'd like to see that that strengthened in particular. There's some discussion of the building line in the report, which was introduced at the examination in public stage, and I'm surprised to see it's a school, which means the building line needs to be moved, because the requirement for the school was known at the examination in public. I take the point that long views are being looked at. I'm not convinced it's true you can't see any of the site from public areas of Epping. I think of the view down Western Road, for example, across to the brook of the valley. But certainly, one of the characteristics of Epping that we have spoken about since the very beginning of the local plan process is it is a market town surrounded by countryside with long views out from the centre of town to the forest and the countryside. And as soon as you start climbing up, the valley side, you risk that. So that will require, very careful attention. The report talks about potential community use of the school. Of course, that community use only becomes available when the school is built, and the timing of that is not in our hands, but is in Essex County Council's hand, and it could happen at any point many years into the future. In the meanwhile, all the residents living on that site, and indeed the residents in the wider South Epping area, who have very few community facilities. In fact, that whole side of the town, that side of the railway line, has very, very few community facilities, without community facilities. And I do think we need to actually firm up and guarantee that community facilities will be available to residents from a very early stage. That could be on-site provision, or it could be, for example, funding improvements to this adjacent scout hut to make that fit for community facilities. But I don't think it's good enough to say there might possibly one day be joint use of communities in a school which will only be available outside school times, probably even if it's got a separate entrance. That, again, I think is an area that needs to be fundamentally strengthened. The phasing also becomes an issue when you're talking about the reprovision of the recreation ground. I like the idea of meanwhile uses of the school site while it's not been taken over by the county council, but the recreation ground reprovision is in part of the 2B landscaping, if I read the report rightly. It's forms part of a separate planning application to the first planning application. And again, there's no guarantee that will be delivered when it's needed. And I think that the existing recreation ground should continue to be available until the school is built, alternative provision is in place. Even so, the replacement village green, from the figures I've seen, seems to be smaller than the existing recreation ground. And in the design code, page 126, it only says it should provide a kickabout area, not it must provide a kickabout area. Given that the fundamental purpose of the existing recreation ground is as a kickabout area, again, I don't think that meets requirements of the local plan in terms of re-providing the recreation ground. I'm pleased, I can make positive comments, I'm pleased how robust Natural England's been about the sustainable alternative natural green space. It does look like they've pushed to make sure that is deliverable. I share some of the concerns about the Heritage Trust about how the fundamental issues of having one immediately adjacent to a motorway. We'll have to hope that the bund does the job. I think it's important that we back up Natural England when the detailed planning application comes through. The infrastructure is mentioned. It's already been discussed tonight. I won't repeat what I said about the health service. Will the IDP be up to date before the planning applications are determined? And it is getting increasingly out of date. We need to make sure it meets infrastructure needs as of now, not as of 5 years ago. And, again, I think that's really important that we have that reassurance. I mean, it's, picking up Councillor Whitehouse's point, Paris 2024, it's 5 paragraphs about transport. None of them mention the junctions along the high road, all of which, when we did the transport study at the local plan, was shown to be at overcapacity or becoming overcapacity, and it is important that they are dealt with, I think referred to in the master plan and dealt more fully in the master plan and dealt with when the planning application has come through. One of the changes it mentions is a reduction of bridges across the brook, and that's portrayed as a benefit. I assume it's also a cost saving. I don't quite follow that on the maps, which do seem to show a vehicular bridge and a pedestrian bridge, particularly on the west side. And it would be helpful to clarification of that. I would be concerned if we lost the extra crossings, because if you want people to walk, if you want people to move around on foot and so forth, making a permeable, or whatever the jargon is, layout, is important to enable people to do that, and not just funnel them through one route. And I'm also a little concerned about some of the references to parking. I mean, there's a tricky balance to be struck between not, ending up with a situation where you've got some houses marooned in a car park, but you've also got sufficient car parking, and car parking is still going to be used. I mean, it talks, for example, about cycle parking being more convenient than car parking. That sounds great, but there comes a stage when car parking becomes inconvenient and you get fly parking. And you see that in a number of estates in the district where there are parking courts around the back, which seem to have plenty of space, but people park on the pavements, they park on other areas, and I think the design needs to recognise human behaviour and take that into account. And again, I'm not convinced the design code and the master plan have quite got that right. I think we need to recognise that the master plan will be a benchmark at which these planning applications will be measured. And I don't think we can say, well, if the master plan leaves things vague or the master plan doesn't mention things, it can all be sorted out of the planning application, because the answer will be from the applicants, well, it's not required by the master plan, it conforms with the master plan, and therefore we don't need to do what you want to do. I think we do need to get it right at this stage. That may mean not approving it tonight and sorting out these issues and bringing it back to the next meeting or a future meeting. But it is really important that we get these issues addressed, we get the detail right, and we have a master plan that's not going to have a negative impact on the wider area. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
If I can read my scribble, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Whitehouse, for your questions. Firstly, you mentioned, you spoke about this site in 2012. That just speaks volumes as to why we've got to get on with some of these sites. We need these houses. But taking your points, the pedestrian cycle footbridge, it's in the answer I got from officers regarding the point about the delay is not because of the negative response, and it went on with a further paragraph which would have answered your question. This has been quite a complex task, as we are seeking to ensure there is no engineering and operational impediments from TfL, and that there would be an organisation willing to adopt the bridge once built. Essex County Council have agreed that, subject to certain processes, they would adopt the bridge, and TfL have not presented any objection to the bridge being constructed from a technical perspective. So we're looking at a new bridge. The building line being moved, I've got to come back to you. That's a bit more detail than I've actually got in front of me. The community use of the school, looking into temporary arrangements. That I think we've got to look into the timing of not only that, but lots of other things, including the phasing of the recreation area, maintaining the recreation ground until the school is built. That's all a matter of timing, and I think will come out in the detail. I appreciate the Natural England involvement, which I've already mentioned. The infrastructure delivery shed, is it going to be up to date before the planning? Well, I can't answer that. It's an ongoing, I speak to officers every Friday, and it's one of the things I mention probably every other week, not every week. Yeah, it is something we are seriously looking at. Any updates on that, I'll let you know. The brooks on the west side and crossings, I'm not sure if officers can help on that one?
Sure. Yep, sure. So to clarify, there is still two crossings. It's just that there isn't two vehicular crossings. So there's one pedestrian which will be on the western part of the site, and the vehicular one will be on the eastern side.
Going on parking, design taking, there's going to be a lot of work done on parking, I'm sure, on the detailed planning application. Dare I say the modal shift argument, but it is happening, it is going to happen. There will be less cars around in the future, whether that's in 10 years or 20 years, I have no idea, but things are changing, but it will be taken into account in the design. And the master plan, well, there's been a lot of work done, and I think from where we're looking at it and the detail we've gone into, we think it should be adopted this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson, just picking up on one of Councillor Whitehouse's points, he was very keen to make sure that if the master plan is agreed tonight, and there are a couple of areas where there's not vague, but not as much detail as people would like, and I think primarily around highways issues, that type of thing. What's our strength if we get a planning application in and the developer says, well, it's not in your master plan?
Can I just, on the same point, but slightly different tack, item 3 of the recommendations is to agree that the Planning Services Director, in consultation with the planning portfolio holder, be authorised to make minor amendments to the SMF. So this is not set in stone. There will be a chance for small amendments, but I'd have to defer to officers on your point, if I may.
Thank you.
Okay, Ed, thank you. Ed, so while the master plan will become an important material consideration, it's the local plan and the local plan policy, along with National Planning Policy Framework, which is the ultimate arbiter of any future planning application. So we will always refer back to the local plan and all the policies in the local plan to help guide our planning decisions.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Some of the points I was planning to raise have been very well raised by Councillor Whitbread, Councillor Holly Whitbread already. Thank you. One of the responses to her comments on the roads was, and indeed we just covered to an extent, was that the traffic plans are not able to be agreed at this stage. There's this. And yet we're here to formally endorse, or you're here to formally endorse the strategic master plan framework. How are we going to be able to come back against something that is as yet undefined? The whole master plan framework to me it seems to ignore issues out of the area it's directly built on. And my other point was just to do with this loss of playing field with the possible, the should be replaced by school playing fields built for a school that may or may not be built in some point in the future.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you again for that. I think your first point, the lack of plan for traffic outside the site, I think that was covered under the question from Councillor Janet Whitehouse, that there will be a transport assessment in detail for the area. I think the recreation area, I think again, it becomes a matter of timing. If you're talking about where the school is going and the recreation ground, we will look into the timing. Obviously, once the school is being built, then that will be lost. But it's the timing of it all. I totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wiskin.
Again, just to point on the infrastructure and the roads, I think the public's expectation will be that the roads are sorted out before the houses get put down. You know, the road is avoided by many people. I'm not a resident of Epping, but I avoid that road like the plague if I really can, because it's dangerous now. God knows what it's be like down the road. But I think the expectation will be get the infrastructure in before anything starts to get built. And secondly, I think the summary of responses to the key issues is palpable in its response to infrastructure and especially the roads, and that really should be amended to reflect some of the local residents' feelings, which are clearly not coming through on that summary.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, the infrastructure will be delivered through the development, through the Section 106 and all the other bits that come with the development. So it's unlikely that it will be there at the beginning, but I think what we will do, and this is becoming more and more the way forward, is insisting that the works that are covered under the Section 106 are delivered part way through the development and not left till the end, because we've seen so many cases where developers have then disappeared and those works have not come in. So the way we've been going forward on other sites is that after a certain number of houses are provided, this will be provided. After another number of houses, this will be provided. So that will be built into the planning application process.
Thank you. Now, we've gone round the chamber and everyone's had a good opportunity to make their comments on this debate. No one's ever happy with these type of arrangements. It's always throws up concerns, and they're the concerns that went back right to the beginning of the local plan process. On recommendation 3, Councillor Williamson, it talks about the minor amendments to the SWF. How minor? Or how strong can they be? I mean, I think it's really important for members to understand. There's a number of things come through here this evening, and members' concerns, particularly around highways, particularly around infrastructure. As we've heard, we've got no real control over what the health service asks for. We're limited. But obviously, the important thing here, I think, that needs to be drawn out is whilst the master plan is important, it's governed by the main local plan, which has in itself the infrastructure plan, which is the key piece. But say, for instance, on the location where the school is going eventually one day, or whatever the community facility is, that probably won't be for some time. Is there any chance that could be used as some form of meanwhile space for recreational purposes, that type of thing? Would that be a minor amendment?
Thank you. Yeah, in my understanding, it would be a minor amendment. What we're talking of is the Planning Services Director and the Planning Portfolio Holder could not change principles, no. Could not change major items, but the item you've raised would come under a minor amendment, I'm fairly certain.
Okay. Members, we've got the recommendations before us this evening. Can we agree to proceed to the next level?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, moving. Sorry, John.
Apologies, but just picking up on that last point, will members be informed of these minor amendments? How will members be informed?
I can certainly make sure that we put arrangements in place that they are made public and to the, yeah.
On these major sites, I think sometimes it would be good. Now, it's always difficult and officers are under enough capacity pressures, as we heard earlier. It would be helpful if on some of these major developments where members are concerned, if there could be an opportunity for feedback, whether it's in the members' bulletin or elsewhere, some form of update would be good. Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to item 10, which is driving better health outcomes. Councillor Rizvi.
Thank you very much, Leader, and really pleased to bring this report before Cabinet. We had a very lively discussion at the Community Scrutinies Committee meeting on the 14th of January, where we were gratefully joined by two NHS officers, two senior NHS officers from the ICB. And the purpose behind this report, Leader, is to propose that us as EFTC will be a member of the West Essex Health and Care Partnership Board, and it was recognised that we have a key role to play in each of the key priorities. And it was also agreed that EFTC has the greatest contribution to the West Essex Healthcare Partnership priorities, and it can be in the prevention of ill health due to our unique position as a housing and planning authority. So the report is there before members. As I said, it had undergone extensive discussion at the Communities Scrutiny Committee meeting. Happy to take any questions and have officers with me as well.
Thank you very much. Now, members, would have been better if this item had been before the last item, because it actually illuminates some of what's been going on. Any questions? I know this has gone through the scrutiny process as well, so it's been well debated already. If there are no questions, can I take this item as being agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Now, item 11, the Essex Procurement Partnership. I realise I need to declare an interest and hand the chair over to Councillor Bedford on this particular one, as I am the Cabinet Member with responsibility for procurement at Essex County Council, and therefore I will declare a non-pecuniary interest, but I will leave the chamber while the item is debated.
Right, evening members. He's left his glasses behind, by the way. Okay, who's the portfolio holders dealing with this one? Over to you then, Councillor Balcombe.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I hope you have all read this report. I mean, basically, it's to delegate authority to the Contracts, Partnership and Procurement Service Director for the signing by the Council of the Essex Procurement Partnership Agreement for a period of 3 years, commencing on the 1st of April 2025, to also agree the adoption of the Essex Procurement Partnership Strategy, Social Value Policy and Approach, and amendments to the Council Procurement Rules. This has been discussed in length at both the Constitution Working Party and the Overview and Scrutiny. The recommendation from both of these was to approve and take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions from members? Silence implies no. In that case then, if we can go to the recommendations 1 to 4, take them on bulk. All those that agree for the recommendations? Thank you. That for item 11 is now completed. Councillor Whitbread can return. I think Jen's just gone again.
That was fast.
Agreed.
Good. Thank you, members. Item 12, smoke control area. Completely lost his way. That's yourself, isn't it?
No, it probably is. I'm just trying to see if
Councillor Kesker.
Thank you, Leader. Smoke control areas. This report sets out 4 options for the Council to consider. The Government's air quality strategy priorities include the reduction of pollution from domestic burning through smoke control areas and use of cleaner fuels. The strategy clearly states the Government's expectation is that local authorities use their powers to reduce PM2.5 and that all councils should support the delivery of national PM2.5 targets by taking action to reduce emissions from sources within their control. Epping Forest District Council have had smoke control areas in place since the 1960s. However, changes brought in by the Environment Act 2021 have necessitated changement to enforcement with the introduction of FPN notices to enable enforcement action to be taken if needed in the future. It is also appropriate to review the smoke control areas to make them fit for the future. The current smoke control areas do not offer consistent protection to the health of our residents across the urban areas of the district. This legislation does not prevent the use of burners or fireplaces, but ensures the adoption of cleaner burning methods which should reduce the creation of PM 2.5 pollution and therefore minimise harm to human health. Reviewing our smoke control areas and adopting these recommendations will show our commitment to the climate change agenda. It's not our intention to be slapping notices on everyone from the word go, but if we have it as a weapon, as it were, for those who will not listen to advice and continue to break the rules, it's what the officers will need to ensure that this goes through. I do have officers here who can answer all the technical questions.
Thank you, Councillor Kesker. Members, I know this has gone to scrutiny as well and it's been debated fully. Any questions? No? Okay. Can I take that as being agreed? Now, Councillor Kesker, no rest for you at the moment. Oh, sorry, Councillor John Whitehouse.
I just wanted to clarify, does this mean you're consulting on all 4 options? When I first read it, I thought the idea was to choose one of the 4 and consult on that. But we had a very interesting discussion on this at scrutiny, by the way. And I think one of the things that came across was, air pollution is something that does affect everyone because of the way the particulates disperse. And I'm grateful to Ms Jagger after the meeting for improving my understanding of exactly the technical bits that we were discussing. But yeah, I mean, the genuine health hazard here, then it seems to make sense the council addresses.
Yeah, Councillor Kesker, 1 or 4?
Thank you, Leader, but I will ask officers to reply on this. Yes, we are talking about one of the 4. No, all 4. All 4. We're looking at introducing all 4 proposals. Okay. And yes, this was discussed fully at ONS before it came back to Cabinet.
Yeah. Now, that's really helpful. Members, just to re-clarify, we're going out for consultation on all 4 options. Can I take that as being agreed?
Oh. Yeah, I've just been advised that we have to agree a fixed penalty charge to be implemented.
Sorry, Mandy, to come back.
Yeah, it was following scrutiny and the comments from scrutiny that we felt that it was wise to go out and consult on all of the options that had been put forward. But we do need a decision tonight, sorry Chair, on the levy of the fixed penalty notice.
Oh yes.
If members could decide that would be appreciated.
Members, fixed penalty. Councillor Kessie.
Thank you, Leader. Just can I ask the Cabinet to agree the introduction of the fixed penalty notices?
Councillor Bedford.
Is there an option there to implement a fixed penalty notice after a warning?
I believe that is the intention. As I say, it's not our intention to go around slapping notices on everyone straight away. People will get a warning and given a chance to be able to stop.
Thank you for that information. In that case, then, do we need to amend the decision required on agree a fixed penalty charge be implemented to agree a fixed penalty charge can be implemented after a warning notice has been issued?
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Bedford. Following scrutiny, we did amend the report. So if you go to page 138, we've got 5 options for fixed penalty notices, and all of them encompass a warning notice first. So we will obviously advise, engage and encourage, and then the first offence would be a warning notice. What I'm seeking here tonight is the levy, whether we would, the second offence would then be £175 and subsequent offences £175, or you've got the staggered approach where again, engage, encourage, warning notice, then 175, subsequent offences 225, and then 225, 225, or 225 going to 300, which is the maximum that we can set, or we can go following the warning notices and engaging, we could go to 300 for all offences following that. So we're just seeking a decision on what levies the Cabinet would agree on.
Thank you. Councillor Risby.
Sorry, Chairman, and just to come in actually on Councillor Bedford's point, I think it would be prudent for us to amend recommendation 3 to align with something along the words of agree the fixed penalty charge to be implemented for second offences and subsequent offences, just to make it absolutely crystal clear that the Council does not intend on pursuing FPNs for a first-time offender.
Members, we've got an amendment there. Can we... I've got a proposer and a seconder for an amendment. Can we take the amendment as being agreed? Yeah?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, now we need to go back to we're looking at a staggered penalty approach in that case. Is that correct? Yep. So we'll work on a staggered penalty approach to give the officers the guidance. Can I take that as being agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, and then on the substantive, can I take that as agreed? Vivian's going to tell me off now.
No. Which option is that? Is that option 4? Which option is it?
It's a staggered approach, so the first one will be 1, and then it will be 175.
Chair, could I suggest option 2 might be the most appropriate option, where it's the obviously engage and encourage, warning notice, and then 175, and then 225.
Yeah, there you go. Option 2.
Yeah, could I propose that it is option 2 that we get voted
Okay,
on?
that's proposed, seconded. Can we take that as being agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Okay, can we now move on? And I'm going to confuse members again because I am going to flip to the, bearing in mind that Councillor Kesker's on a run, I'm going to flip to the two items that he has on the supplementary papers, which is starting with agenda item 20, the CCTV strategy.
Thank you, Leader. The CCTV strategy covers the period 2025 to 2032. The strategy sets out the Council's current CCTV provision, location, number of cameras, maintenance costs, repairs and replacements for the next 7 years. It provides an overview of the benefits that are realised for local communities in which it is installed and the various uses made of CCTV footage. We have successfully met the current capital programme forecasted under the work programme for 2019 to 25. The new strategy is required for the ongoing maintenance and replacement of the Council's CCTV infrastructure. The strategy has been extended to cover a 7-year period to 2032 to align with the expected lifespan of these assets. And I have officers again who can answer technical questions.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. I just want to pick up on the scrutiny comments again, if that's okay. I mean, it says Scrutiny Committee agreed the report, and the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee says pending the inclusion of the comments made by the committee, Scrutiny agreed the report. And I think the comments it's referring to was a response made to Councillor George about the fact that there were plans to replace the CCTV in the Crest Lane car park and incorporate it into the council system, which presumably wasn't known when the report was drafted, but now it's being agreed, really ought to be incorporated into what you agreed tonight. Thanks, Chairman.
Andy. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that comment related to, because it wasn't showing on the Appendix 1, which was amended to show that it was included. It was actually replaced at the end of 2024, which is why it was showing as like new investment over the next 7 years, but it would come into the next period of 7 years. But I can certainly include that into the comments if that's more appropriate.
I mean, as long as it's happening and the funding's there, that's the key thing, but I think it would be helpful to see it documented.
Yeah, I can add that to the report.
That would be good. Councillor Rizvi.
Sorry, Chairman, to come in with a question, but it is for the officer, and excuse me for the slightly technical nature of it, but it was more to kind of ask about the mix and the type of cameras that will be part of this strategy. And one of the things that we did talk about previously at the briefing was in terms of sort of wildlife type cameras to serve as a deterrent for areas of fly tipping and kind of like general waste accumulation. So if the officer would be so kind to expand on that in terms of the nature of cameras.
Yes, so there's a range of cameras that are available, certainly with wildlife cameras. There's some PIN cameras that they use. There's the redeployables that are the ones that go up on the columns that can be moved around. And then obviously you've got your static cameras. So there's a whole range that they've got available to them.
Thank you.
Leader, if I could just say, without giving too much away, we have a whole range of devices, and our aim is to deploy them where best without letting people know who are fly tipping where the cameras are going in advance.
Absolutely. Okay, members, can I agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Then we move on to item 21, which is the antisocial behaviour policy. Councillor Kesker again.
Thank you, Leader. The proposal to introduce an ASB policy is to ensure we have a policy in place covering investigations of ASB. Currently, we have a comprehensive set of procedures that encompass policy, but we need a separate policy in place. The policy defines our approach to the management and investigation of antisocial behaviour complaints that the Council receives. It provides clear guidance on responsibilities and expectations for victims of antisocial behaviour within the district. There is a requirement under Section 218A of the Housing Act 1996 to publish our ASB policy. The policy is district-wide and will encompass all housing tenures, privately owned, private renting or social housing. And again, I have officers to answer technical questions.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Nope. Therefore, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Then we move back to the main agenda again to item 13, Council House Building Development. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Leader. This is, as it states in the document there, to agree that the EFDC to appropriate for housing purposes the Chequers B Loughton site from the general fund to the housing revenue fund, housing revenue account. There is some detail in there. Obviously, we need a decision on this as soon as possible. Planning permission is running out effectively, but we are applying for further extension to that. But the reason that it's been so delayed is we've been waiting to get the planning permission sorted on the substation, which needs to be moved. I've got nothing further to add to that than what's in the report. If any questions come forward, I'm sure we've got officers to answer.
Members, are you happy with this report? Any questions? No? Okay, can that be agreed?
Agreed.
Therefore, we move on to item 14, Council Housing Development, Pearls Lane. Who's that?
Me.
Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Leader. A Cabinet to approve for EFDC officers to gain the necessary permissions to enable the currently designated allotment land at Pearls Lane to be disposed of. Now, the report goes into quite some detail around the breakup of the site, how it's allocated, and covers the fact that the council must show the allotment is not necessary and surplus to requirements, and this is apparent as the land has not been used as allotments for many years. There are two conditions that we have to meet to do this, and we must also demonstrate to the National Allotment Society the interpretation of disposing of the land has been granted by the Cabinet. So it's a two-tier approach to disposal of the land. Nothing further to add. If anybody else should have read the report, any questions, I'll try and answer them. If not, officers are here present.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Wiskin.
Have the allotment sites actually been advertised for use?
No, they never have. Not as far as I'm aware. It was the original site that was owned by EFDC. If you look at the makeup of the land at some point, I think there's two parts of that land that are owned by independent people. One, I think, is Loughton Town Council and somebody else. But it's never had a use as an allotment as far as I'm aware. I think the report does detail the use, previous use. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, can we agree that recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you. And with that, can I thank everyone for their patience this evening? I think it's a really good night of debate, which was very helpful. And we managed to avoid going into the pink on the tender items, which I'm always pleased about. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.